Happy Friday, Youngs Grove. Today would have been our last day of school. So today is going to be my last Fractions Friday lesson. And so for today's lesson, what I want to do is just a quick recap of all the things we have learned on the previous Fraction Fridays episodes. I hope you enjoy and that you have a great summer. As we begin today's lesson, one thing I want to emphasize to you is that fractions are division. Now, a fraction is part of a whole. It consists of a numerator, the top number, and a denominator, the bottom number. The numerator tells how many parts you are working with, and the denominator tells how many equal parts the whole is divided into. Anytime the numerator and the denominator are the same, that fraction is equal to one whole. So 2 halves, 3 thirds, 4 fourths, and 5 fifths are all equal to one whole. Equivalent fractions are fractions with different numbers that show the same amount. These fractions are equal to one another. So half is equal to 2 fourths, 1 fourth is equal to 2 eighths, and 1 sixth is equal to 2 twelfths. What is half? To find half, you must divide the total number of parts into two equal groups. You know a fraction is equal to half when the numerator is half of the denominator. So if we look at our example, our first fraction is half. We have a whole divided by 2, and we shade in one of those halves, and that's equal to half. The same thing with 2 fourths. Our whole is divided into 4 equal pieces. So I'm going to shade in half again of the circle, and I can see that that is 2. So 2 fourths. I also know that 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2 fourths is equal to half. Same with 3 sixths. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 4 eighths, the same thing. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So if the top number is half of the bottom number, then you know that fraction is equal to 1/2. To add fractions with like denominators, you only add the numerators. The denominator stays the same because the total parts the whole is divided into does not change. So if I have 1 fifth plus 3 fifths, that's going to equal 4 fifths. I'm just adding the numerators. The same is true when subtracting fractions with like denominators. You only subtract the numerators. The denominator stays the same. So if I have 9 twelfths and I subtract 2 twelfths, that's going to leave me 7 twelfths. When multiplying a whole number by a fraction, it is important to remember that multiplication is repeated addition. In this problem, we have 3 times 2 eighths, which means we have 3 groups of 2 eighths. So the repeated addition would be 2 eighths plus 2 eighths plus 2 eighths, which I know would be 6 eighths, because as we reviewed, when we add fractions, the only thing we add is the numerator. The denominator stays the same. So I know that 3 times 2 eighths equals 6 eighths. You can also multiply the whole number by the numerator while the denominator stays the same. So you can multiply 3 times 2 to get 6, and just know that the denominator does not change. And finally, when ordering fractions from least to greatest, the most important thing to remember is that the more people you share with, the smaller the size of the pieces. So when we would think that 1/2 would be the smallest because of the 2, that's not really true, because you can see from our drawings, our models here, that 1/2 is actually the greatest. So when you share with 6 people, your piece is a lot smaller than when you share with 2 people. So our order from least to greatest would be 1 sixth, 1 fifth, 1 fourth, 1 third, and 1/2. Hey guys, as we conclude our Fraction Fridays, I just want to leave you with a few words. First of all, I want you to know that I love you and I miss you. Second of all, I want to leave you with this quote by one of my favorite writers. His name is Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And so that's what we're doing, guys. We're blazing a brand new trail during this time with this COVID-19. But you know what? We're going to be okay. And I look forward to seeing you in the fall, to working with you. And I hope you guys have a wonderful summer and that you remember that fractions are division. And you can find them everywhere.